Hi everyone, I'm really nervous, so give grace. I'm a blessed believer who's in recovery and struggles with meth, codependency, anger, alcohol, grief, abandonment issues, and self-worth. My name is Maia. Hi fam. I was born and raised in South San Diego. I was an only child growing up. When I was around 5 years old, my parents got a divorce. According to the photos, my childhood was happy and I was always smiling. I remember adjusting to divorce as a kid. I would cry myself to sleep with my dad's picture under my pillow. He was in the Navy, so I did not see him often. I did receive letters and pictures while he was away. I was such a daddy's girl. Eventually, my parents each remarried. With my mom working and going to school, I was mainly raised by my grandparents. I was always home alone. I was lonely growing up. I had a few friends here and there, but I struggled with being super shy. I remember one day in school, my grandpa came to pick me up, and he made me promise to take care of my grandma like 5 times. I said I would. Later on, I found out that my grandpa went to live with another woman. It made sense now with all the arguments that were always in Tagalog, so that I wouldn't know what they were arguing about. I can't imagine the heartache and pain my grandma went through because of the damage my grandpa did. I felt that big emptiness of abandonment once again. My grandpa left his entire family, and for years I never heard or saw him until he was on his deathbed, dying from lung cancer. He passed away in July 2004. It was the first time that I had to deal with death in my family up close and very personal. I was numb. I made the decision I never wanted to get married. I was like, why? Everyone in my family had been divorced. In 3rd grade, my mom asked me if I wanted to live with her and her husband in Nigeria, Africa, or with my dad and his wife, who were getting transferred to Gaeta, Italy. It was a huge decision to make at that age. I asked why couldn't I just stay with my grandma, but I guess that wasn't an option. Not only was I going to leave all of my friends, I was going to live out of the country. I was very terrified. I chose to live with my dad and his wife. Things were pretty great after a while. I loved exploring the country and being with my dad and my stepmom. And then my little brother was born. The dynamics of the family changed. I felt like the unwanted child. I felt a sense of abandonment. I felt that all my stepmom told my dad about me was negative. I began to build a wall of resentment. I couldn't really talk to my dad because he was always gone a lot. During my time in Italy, my mom was able to visit me once. It was wonderful to see her, but when she had to return to Africa after 2.5 years of living in Gaeta, Italy, I was again being uprooted, leaving all that I knew, and was going to live with my mom and her husband in Africa. I don't even remember if my dad was there to say goodbye. Years went by before I saw my dad again. Being in Africa was truly an impactful experience. We lived in a city called Lagos in an apartment with just the bare necessities. We rarely had electricity or running water. We had to go to the pump and fill oil cans to fill a huge barrel for our water. We recycled dirty dishwater to flush the toilet. We had to walk to the market to buy our food and toilet paper by the roll. Sometimes we were so poor, all we had to eat was rice that had tiny stones and bugs. So we had to thoroughly clean it before we were able to eat it. On occasion, my grandma would send a care package and a Hershey chocolate bar that was like gold. The Nigerian food was very interesting there for sure, and the people were overall very friendly. I enjoyed walking to the outdoor market to get groceries with my mom, and it was just a very different way of life. A mosquito net was a must. I had made a few friends and became very attached to them. Sometimes my home life was rough as well because my mom and stepdad or a husband would fight and I had nowhere to escape. After 8 months, my mom and I went back to the United States. She divorced, and again I had to adapt and camouflage. It was serious culture shock. I went back to school at the end of 6th grade and I felt so out of place. I was extremely shy and didn't like to associate with others. Also having to always leave friends in the past, I thought that was the point. What was the point of getting close to others? So throughout junior high and high school, I was an average kid that wasn't popular or smart or felt like I didn't fit in. I was grateful for that one best friend or that special small group that helped me get through school. I was a late bloomer. In my senior year, I started drinking and smoking weed. I had my first boyfriend at that time. I began to ditch school and I barely graduated. 2.5 years later, I had my world turned upside down. My complete trust in people were broken. The guy that I thought I was going to have a future with cheated and broke my heart. I felt so shattered, so broken. I felt like because of this, I am not pretty enough or good enough for anyone. I promised myself that I would never let people hurt me again. Hurt people. I lived life a little bit detached and just partied on. My circle of friends changed. Those that genuinely cared about me were very concerned, but I couldn't see it, and I thought I had it under control. At 20 years old, I was introduced to crystal meth for the first time by my first boyfriend. I will never forget that moment. I felt like I could do anything. Little did I know what this drug would do to me and my future. At first, it was all fun and games, but slowly it would destroy me. I got into so much trouble. My addiction lasted 13 years, and I made so many wrong choices. Around 2002, my bad choices almost took my life. I was involved in a very toxic and violent relationship. Oh, that's my earring. Oh, I'm sorry. I was beaten, strangled, and treated so horrifically I didn't know how to break free. At this time, I was also introduced to the needle. I am extremely terrified of needles and swore to myself that I would never use in that way, but that went out the window. I will never forget the day I found myself on the floor. I woke up and I was hearing this loud popping and cracking sound as if like the noise of a bonfire. I was hearing voices and seeing scary things. I later found out that I was in psychosis. I thought I was going to be killed. I heard a loud, clear voice that told me to run, so I did. I ran through the backyard and somehow climbed the fence and ran right into the neighbor's glass door. I busted my nose, and I think everyone that was there was at a dinner table. I don't remember. I screamed for help, and I hid behind their trash cans. I had for a brief moment of clarity, and I was never so relieved to see the police and be arrested. I was so out of it, I somehow lost my shoes in jail. A woman gave me some slippers to wear. I don't know how long I was there. I was scared and I had nowhere to go. I was too ashamed and embarrassed to go back home. I swore I would never, ever use the needle again and never did, yet I still would use. Eventually, after a week or so of being out of jail, house hopping from friend to friend, still trying to get high when I could, I took a chance and went to live with this lady. I knew her from church. I remember that this lady was named Kathy G. She took in the homeless and those that just got out of jail. I was lucky enough to catch her on the way out because she was pulling out her parking space. I actually thank God that this and His timing is always perfect. If I had been 1 minute late, I would have missed her. From that time, it was nice to have a safe and sober place to live and have some structure and the people who I could relate to and who treated me like a normal person with love and grace. She was the one who helped plant that little mustard seed of hope and took me to church often. I had made the choice to get baptized because it had seemed like the right thing to do, but I was not fully committed and not fully surrendered. Unfortunately, during the following few years, I did not live according to Christ. I was still struggling with drugs, and that got me kicked out of Kathy's. I became involved in another abusive relationship. Due to my arrest, I was court-ordered, and I had tried to do outpatient and other programs, but on my own. I failed and always relapsed. I finally checked into a residential program. I relapsed twice while I was there. I got kicked out and I had to wait to be put on the waiting list, so back to Kathy's. By the grace of God, He gave me another chance. I got back into the residential program and was doing well until I got prideful. I thought I could handle going back to the old people, places, and things. I used and went back to the program. I was thinking I could get away with it, but then I learned I had to work an honors program. So I told myself. I prayed fervently. By the grace of God, the staff allowed me to stay. The way I saw God's grace that day made me work hard at my program and didn't leave the safety of the rehab. My mom would come visit me on the weekends, and I was so grateful. I made some lasting friendships at this place, all of which I still keep in contact with today. I completed the program on September 15, 2006, on my birthday. It was awesome to have my mom and dad and my little brothers there to see me complete treatment. I thought I was cured and thought I could go back to that toxic relationship and not use. As soon as I got home, I relapsed because I was returning to my old people, places, and things. I love that I lost all that clean time and it all went downhill once again. In the summer of 2007, I found out I was pregnant. The day before, the baby's dad got arrested in a sweep. I was so terrified and extremely helpless and hopeless. I was definitely not ready for motherhood. I couldn't even take care of myself. How was I supposed to raise up a child? I felt worthless. I was so messed up and my life was extremely unmanageable. The first 2 months after I found out I was pregnant, I tried to hide it. I didn't care. I even used pretty hard while I was pregnant. I felt like I had no one to turn to. I did not know what to do. On my birthday, I decided to go to Planned Parenthood and get the baby aborted. But they gave me a sonogram and said, nope, it's too late. You have to have the baby. Soon after one night, I felt the baby flutter, and I felt guilt and shame because I was high. But after that single moment, it changed me completely. I had to stop this lifestyle, this addiction, because I was going to be a mother. My mom called me from Fiji around that time, and I had told her that I wasn't going to have an abortion, and she was so happy. At that time, she lived sometimes in San Diego and the rest of her time with her husband in Fiji. She decided to come home to help me with the pregnancy, and I was so grateful. I moved to my grandma's and started getting sober on my own and took better care of myself. I was going to Midway Ocean View Church every Sunday with my mom and to the new Celebrate Recovery program that had started in 2005. The baby's father wasn't really involved. I love being sober this time around. I truly began to care about something other than myself. I developed some incredible friendships in recovery who have been with me this very day through it all. I felt such love and genuine care. The house was so full at the baby shower. It was a very memorable moment, and God's loving grace, comfort, and amazing love was shining bright at this time through all these wonderful people. I also began to draw closer to God, and I wanted a relationship with Him. I began to live a better life. Then on December 13th, I went to bed and I felt a really hard kick. On December 14th, 2007, I realized the whole day I didn't feel the baby move. I was huge then and I didn't think anything of it. She was going to be due in about a week and a half anyways. But something told me to call the doctor, especially because they had me on watch. I was at high risk and should be on bed rest. The insurance approval to get a sonogram came in that same day. I had been waiting on that for a while. They had told me to come in. On the way there, I had this tsunami of overwhelming fear creeping through me. Even my mom, as she drove me to UCSD, was having a hard time finding words to prepare me for the worst. When I arrived and met with the doctor, I was told that there was no heartbeat. I asked them to check again. I was told that my daughter, who I had named Jasmine Dawn, wasn't alive, that she was a fetal demise. I was utterly broken. I never felt such soul-ripping pain like this ever in my life. Not even on my darkest day, and my addiction equal to my giving birth to Jasmine. I was blanketed with so much pain and anguish physically and mentally. On December 15, 2007, she was delivered stillborn with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck. She was a whopping 8 pounds and 1 ounce, and she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The most beautiful God-created thing I had ever seen. Jasmine had such a peaceful, sleeping, angelic look on her face as I held her with my own mother standing by me. I was so grateful for my own mother being there so she could see her only grandchild and that I wasn't facing this alone. If she wasn't there, I would have had to endure this tragedy by myself. The baby's father never came to see me through all that, and so I felt more resentment, pain, anger, and hate. It was nice to have the pastor and his wife come and visit me as I tried to physically recover. I tried to deal with that pain and grief the right way and tried to stay sober. After a month or so, I reached out to others who had been through the same thing and even found a lady at church who comforted me and knew my pain. I realized I wasn't alone. Fortunately, my pain became too great. I blamed and I hated God. I wanted to know why, and I relapsed again. I used meth like I had never stopped, and harder than ever. Soon the drugs couldn't even help me cope with this pain, guilt, and shame I was holding on to. I did not want to feel or deal with all this pain. I wanted to be numb. I cried so many nights, and I was so far from God. I was miserable, and I was getting sick and tired. I would go to church sometimes or to CR, but I was still using. I began to pray for Jesus to just take this pain away or just take me. I began to not care if I lived or died. I was clinging to this damaged and broken relationship with this baby's father only because, in my head, that was the last thread I had with my daughter. Then on July 9, 2009, God gave me the strength and courage to close that chapter of my life. I now know God had always had a purpose for taking her back, for allowing that brief moment with her on earth. Isaiah 55:8-9 says, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so So my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. God has taught me that these valleys I go through are painful, but the good Lord holds my hand and walks me through, not allowing me to wallow for long. Jesus carried me when I thought I could not go on. When my pain became bigger than my fear of being alone and facing my hurts, hang-ups, and habits, I embraced the changes that God is making in me. I fully surrendered my heart when I made the declaration to rededicate my life to Jesus on August 12, 2016, when I went to the CR West Coast Summit. Today I am in a blessed marriage with my husband who knew me in my addiction. I am very grateful God has blessed me with a husband who now knows me in sobriety. God brought us together after 10 years. Funny how God works. I have been blessed with restored, wonderful relationships with my family because of this. I have hope and joy today. Psalm 28:7 says, "The Lord is my strength and shield. I trust him with all my heart. He helps me, and my heart is filled with joy. I burst out in songs of thanksgiving. The Lord continues to refine me, to make me stronger in my faith, holding me to be more loving and more compassionate so that I can be there for others. I now have a much clearer perception of who God is. I have a strong support group. I have a strong support group that has been there for me during some pretty dark times and encouraged me to stay clean and sober. I know how much I need to rely on Jesus every moment. In May 2014, I was on my way to a church event when my sister-in-law called me from Florida and told me that my dad had died of a heart attack in my youngest brother's arms. First thing my mind thought was get high or drunk. But instead, I knew I had to be around my church family. I had so many different emotions and tons of regret. My dad had never gotten to know me as a new Christian that was in recovery. I never made the effort to talk about Jesus to him. I had been in touch with him over the years and was still upset that he didn't walk me down the aisle. I regretted ignoring the conviction that God put on my heart to call and talk to him a few days before he died. Looking back, I can see that Looking back, I can see that God had made out of this tragic time and gave me the chance to know and reestablish a new relationship with my two younger brothers and made peace with my brother's mom after all these years in Italy. Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called to his purpose for them. Today, I have learned from being in the CR program and completing step studies and leadership training, I am able to reach out to others now and not be afraid to tell my story. So I'm kind of nervous still. And not to be ashamed of it. Not to be ashamed of it. With the gift of God's mercy and grace, I am able to be of service at Feeding San Diego. I am a co-leader at a CR Women's Small Group. I am also an associate member of Broken Chains JC family. Woo! I recently received my 9-year chip. Each day I am blessed to not let all those negative lies that the enemy says to take up place in my head and my sinful heart. During my journey on being sober and my walk with God, I have had to deal with the loss of loved ones, friends, loss of my job, trials at home, having no money, no food, but God has gotten me through it all and provided for me all that I need. I am so grateful for God's mercy, grace, and patience. Definitely thankful for his astronomical grace. I am learning to trust him with everything. Because of my years of drug use, I developed a tear in my heart valve, and it later developed into pulmonary arterial hypertension, a rare sickness. I know that I now take medicines for the rest of my life. I am I am a cervical cancer survivor since November 2012. Thank you. And I know without my faith in the Lord, I wouldn't have had the strength to endure. Due to the treatment, I cannot have children because I don't have ovaries. I realized that Jasmine Dawn would be my one and only child. But I had made my peace with that. But despite it all, I am seriously, truly full of Jesus' joy and have a true attitude of gratitude every day God gives me. And despite my partial blindness and other health issues, I could still count it all joy and still give thanks. My life now, in comparison, comparison to what it was before, is amazing. I am so blessed to have such wonderful and ever-growing relationship with God today. God has put all these miracles and incredible people in my life today. I know now that I am never alone and nothing is too big for my God. God and Celebrate Recovery have taught me that I do not have to do life alone. Jesus has restored my hope, which is something I had lost along the way. I am learning to be accountable today. I am learning how to be an obedient child of God. God is teaching me how to be a better wife, daughter, granddaughter, sister, and friend today. I am definitely far from perfect, but I am loved by a perfect God. God is good. And if you are new to recovery and to CR, I pray that you hold on to that mustard seed of hope and faith, because that's all I had when I began CR. I have found peace, joy, and freedom that only God can provide. I have worked the steps, found a fabulous sponsor, and established a strong support group. I don't do life or this recovery journey alone. Through CR, I was able to forgive myself and acknowledge that my daughter's death was not my fault. The heavy burden of that guilt and shame that I couldn't let go of kept me in my addiction. I have been able to make amends with my family, who now love and trust me again. I have learned to also love myself, and I know that my worth and identity is in Christ. We do recover. I want to end with my favorite life verse, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Thank you for letting me share my story for his magnificent glory.
Come on, man. All right. This is